The song dropped, and nobody was watching the right person. For weeks, the internet has been treating this like a mess between a rapper and a boxer, like it's two women from two different worlds beefing over a man, and that framing is exactly why almost everybody has been reading the whole situation wrong. The thing that landed today, and it landed with the kind of timing that tells you it was never an accident, is not just a diss record. It is a statement of authorship. And that is the part nobody is sitting with yet. There are two timelines running at the same time right now. The one you've been watching, the public one, is a straightforward story. Rapper drops a song at an ex and his new woman, the day before the new woman has a fight. That's the version the internet is eating up. But the second timeline, the one hiding underneath it, is about who actually wrote what, and who has spent 2 years quietly claiming credit for words that were never theirs to claim. Remy Ma dropped a song called Wanna Go the day before Claressa Shields steps in the ring against K. Scott, and on paper that looks like Rome just throwing a grenade to be petty. What I'm about to show you is that this grenade was built brick by brick, that it is riding on a beat choice that references a woman who got blocked by Claressa Shields barely a week ago, and that the person this song most exposes is not the boxer at all. It's the man standing next to her. So before you decide you already know where this is going, let me tell you where we're actually heading when we get to the part about the cease and desist, and I promise you we are getting there. You are going to understand why every move Papoose and Claressa Shields have made since this started has looked less like a counterattack and more like two people trying to delete a story they can no longer control. And that is a story about money, about credit, about ego, and about a culture that is finally, visibly, turning on the people who thought they could rewrite history in real time. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now, if you've been living under a rock, let me catch you up real quick, because the full context here matters more than the song itself. Remy Ma and Papoose were the storybook couple of hip-hop for over a decade. You remember the myth as well as I do. Papoose proposed to Remy while she was locked up. He held it down for her entire bid. He was the loyal husband writing love letters and waiting, and when she came home in 2014, it was supposed to be a fairy tale second chapter. That image was sold to all of us for years, and it was powerful. It's the reason so many people instinctively side with whoever got wronged, because the whole foundation of their public identity was built on loyalty through the storm. And then it all unraveled. The two of them split, and extremely fast. Papoose was seen with Claressa Shields, the undisputed boxing champion, the self-proclaimed GWOT, the woman from Flint, Michigan who has made a second career out of talking as loud as she fights. Now, on the surface, that's just your average messy celebrity breakup with a twist, but I need you to understand what this actually is, because it is bigger than gossip. Remy Ma is a New York rapper with real credibility, a woman who did time, who came up in an era where your pen meant everything, where bars were currency and your name in the streets was earned, not bought. Claressa Shields is an elite athlete trying to break into music, a woman who has all the fame and all the money in the world, but, by most honest accounts, none of the rap talent to match it. When those two collide, the stakes stop being about a man and start being about something deeper, who gets to be called a rapper, who actually wrote the bars that built a career, and whether the culture is going to let an outsider with a boxing record warp the rules that hip-hop was built on. And then there's the money. There's the publishing. There's the fact that for the last couple of years, according to public claims, one person has been saying he wrote 90% of another person's rhymes. Once that claim enters the air, everything changes, because now the beef isn't about love anymore. It's about ownership. It's about legacy. It's about whether a man can spend a decade attached to a woman's career and then, the moment he's got a new woman on his arm, try to tear that same career down by claiming the words were never hers. That's the real fight happening underneath the boxing match on Saturday, and it is the reason this song matters right now, this week, this specific day, before a specific bell rings in Atlanta. Let's start with the surface, because the surface here is already devastating all on its own, before you even get into the layers underneath. The first thing you have to look at is the beat. Remy Ma did not just grab any instrumental off the shelf. She took the crime mob record, Knuck If You Buck, and if you know Atlanta, if you know the South, if you have ever been in a room when that record comes on, you know it is not just a song, it is a sanctioned riot anthem. That beat has been moving crowds for 2 decades, and you pull that particular instrumental for a specific reason. It carries history, it carries aggression, and it carries a geographic and cultural weight that is not an accident. Now here's where it gets surgical, and this is exactly the kind of detail that separates a real strategic diss from somebody just being angry. Barely a week before this song dropped, there was a widely reported situation where Princess, or Diamond, from the actual group Crime Mob, said she had reached out to Claressa Shields to walk her out to Knuck If You Buck at her fight and got blocked. She got blocked. The artist actually tied to the legendary anthem tried to link with the champion, and the champion shut the door on her. That was all over the blogs, all over the feed, and now, 1 week later, on the day before Claressa Shields has a fight, Remy Ma drops a diss record on that exact same beat. Does everybody understand how crazy that is? That is not a coincidence. That is a person doing their homework, watching the whole narrative shift in real time, and then stepping on the gas. You have the champion looking like she turned her back on the culture, and the veteran rapper from New York swooping in to pick up the very anthem that the champion's cold shoulder threw into the spotlight. That is strategy in the Tupac sense. Play the plot, strategize, and bomb first, and Remy Ma is bombing first on a beat that she did not have to use, but chose to, because she understood exactly what it would say. That alone is a masterclass, and it's the first piece of visible evidence that this is not some thrown-together shot. This is calculated warfare. The second piece of surface evidence is the coverage and the platform rollout. The song went up on all the major services, Apple Music, Spotify, the whole standard run, the day before the fight, and it hit with a title that is itself a provocation. Wanna go is a challenge. It's the thing you say to somebody when you're asking if they actually want to step, and you put that title out on the eve of a world title fight at State Farm Arena in Atlanta. The timing is not subtle. Claressa Shields fights Kay Scott on Saturday, August 15th, for the Unified Middleweight Championship, and instead of that fight week being about her legacy, about her training camp, about the belts, the entire conversation got hijacked the day before by a New York rapper with a pen. Think about what that does to an athlete's head. Fight week is supposed to be a controlled environment. You're cutting weight, you're locked in, your whole team is feeding you calm energy so you can perform on the biggest night of your year, and then somebody drops a song that is going to be everywhere, in every group chat, on every timeline, in every comment section under every post about your fight. People talk about mental warfare in boxing all the time, about fighters trying to get inside each other's heads before the bell, and Remy Ma just did to Claressa Shields from outside the ring what most opponents could never do inside it. She got inside her head without throwing a single punch, and she did it with a song that the entire internet now has to talk about. That's devastating, and it's the second layer of proof that this was all intentional. The third piece of surface evidence is the cover art, and I need you to actually picture this. From what's been shown, she's positioned in a way that reads like a boss holding leashes, and people have read those dogs as a direct shot at both Papoose and Claressa Shields. You don't just slap two dogs on a diss record cover by accident, not when you're this precise. There is a reading there, and I think it's the correct one, that she's controlling both of them, that she's the one holding the chain, that no matter how loud they bark, she's the one at the end of the leash. And then there's the obvious turn, the wordplay that any adult catches immediately, the thing you call a female dog. It's crude, it's sharp, and it's exactly the kind of double meaning a veteran with her ear to the ground puts on a cover on purpose. You layer that on top of the beat choice and the timing, and you start to see the full architecture of this thing. It's not one joke, it's 3 or 4 different shots stacked on top of each other, all pointing the same direction, all landing at the same time. And the fourth piece of surface evidence, the one that ties it all together, is the fact that this is not even the first time. This is a pattern now. Before Wanna Go, there was I Fell, a track where she very pointedly clapped back at the claim that someone else wrote her rhymes, and that record itself kicked off a whole wave of reactions, with Claressa Shields publicly responding and the internet picking sides. So, what you're watching is not a one-off. It's a sustained campaign. It is a veteran rapper who has decided that she is going to reclaim her name, her pen, and her narrative, one record at a time, and she is doing it with a consistency that is genuinely impressive to watch. For bars here, a freestyle there, a new record the day before the biggest fight of her ex's new woman's year. It is relentless, and it is working. But here's the thing, and this is where I need you to lock in, because everything we just covered is the stuff any fan can see with their own eyes, and if you stop here, you've missed the entire reason this situation is about to get a whole lot deeper. Because underneath the beat, underneath the cover art, underneath the timing, there is a claim that has been hanging in the air for years, and that claim is about to get dismantled in a way that changes everything. And oh, do I have more for you? The fans of the champion, the ones parked in the comments right now already typing that this is just Remy being bitter, that she can't let go, that she's mad her man left her for a real winner. You are not ready for this next part. Because this is where it stops being about a breakup and starts being about who actually built the career you're all defending. Here's the claim that has been sitting in plain sight, and I want you to really sit with it before we move. According to public reporting, Papoose went on record claiming that he wrote something like 90% of the rhymes that came out of Remy Ma's mouth since he met her. 90%. That included, by his own framing, work going back to records like Conceited, the 2006 hit that a whole generation knows bar for bar. Now think about what that claim actually is. That is a man, in the middle of a messy public split, deciding to reach backward across nearly 2 decades and say, essentially, that the woman whose career he stood beside, whose name he used to build an image of loyalty around, was largely reading his words the whole time. Whether or not any of it is true, and we are going to examine the receipts in a minute, the act of saying it is itself a grenade. You don't make that claim on accident. You make it to wound, to rewrite history, to reframe an entire career as a co-production where you were the real genius and she was the voice. That is the cultural layer of this beef, and it's the part the casual fan, the person just watching clips, completely misses. Because once a man says, I wrote 90% of your rhymes, the argument is no longer about who cheated and who got left. It is about whose name, whose legacy, whose money actually belongs to whom. And that is a fight hip-hop has been having about ghostwriting and credit for decades, and it's one where the culture always lands on the same side. And speaking of the culture, that's exactly where this next layer lives, in the reactions of the people watching from inside the room. Because here's what happens the moment a diss record drops on a legendary beat with this much timing, the whole hip-hop commentariat wakes up at once. You have people pointing out immediately that the Knuck If You Buck connection is a direct callback to the crime mob block situation, and that's not a reach. That's the actual sequence of events that every blog picked up. You have fans side by side comparing the two women as rappers, and the comparison is not kind to the champion. And this is where the nuance comes in, because I'm going to be fair here for a second. There is a version of this story where Claressa Shields is just a world-class athlete who happens to enjoy making music, who has the money and the platform to put out records, and who is allowed to do that without being dragged into a credibility war she never asked for. I get that. Everybody has the right to make art, everyone has the right to try, and no one is obligated to be a battle rapper just because their new man used to be married to one. I'll give her that. But here's the counter that demolishes it. She didn't stay out of it. She stepped into it. She publicly responded to WIFL. She's been running her mouth about Remy in interviews. She's been co-signing the very claim that Papoose wrote 90% of the rhymes, and in doing so she made herself a participant, not a bystander. You can't claim the athlete's immunity while you're simultaneously throwing haymakers in the comment war. The moment she opened her mouth and backed the ghostwriting narrative, she stopped being the innocent third party and became a co-author of the attack on Remy's whole career. That's the nuance resolved, the sympathy card she could have played. She tore it up herself. But the cultural layer goes even further, because what you're really watching is a split screen of two very different approaches to earning respect, and the culture can feel the difference in its bones. On one side, you've got Remy Ma, a woman who did actual time and came home and put out records that respect the fundamentals, who sat in rooms with legends, who built her name in the era where you had to prove it every single bar. On the other side, you've got Claressa Shields, who is undeniably a generational talent in the ring, but who is also, and I'm just describing what everybody already says in the group chats, trying to buy her way into a credibility that doesn't come from checks. People are constantly comparing her looks, her style, her fashion, her whole presentation, to Remy's, and Remy keeps winning those comparisons without even trying, and that's the cruelest part for the champion. And then there's the detail that nobody seems to connect, the one that proves just how deep the culture has already turned. The woman from Crime Mob, the actual artist behind the song Remy is now writing, reached out to Claressa and got blocked. She got blocked by the very champion who now has to hear that anthem blasting in the background of a diss record aimed at her own face. Read that again. She couldn't walk out to the song, but Remy Ma can drop a whole diss on it and make the entire internet associate that beat with Claressa's humiliation going forward. You could not script a more poetic cultural reversal, and the fact that it all happened within a week of each other is the kind of thing that makes you genuinely wonder if the universe isn't just running the whole storyline on its own. This is where the story pivots, though, because everything I've laid out is still the stuff you can watch and feel from the outside, and the real revelation, the reason this video exists, lives one floor below all of it, in the actual business of who owns what. I need you to stay with me, Because we are shifting gears hard now from the culture into the machine, and this is the part that separates knowing the gossip from understanding the game. Hip-hop has a long, ugly history with the question of who actually writes the bars. From ghostwriters in the mainstream era to the old debate about studio teams, credit in rap is the most fought-over currency there is, and it matters because it translates directly into money, into publishing splits, into the way an artist is valued when it comes time to sign the next deal. So when Papoose stands up and says he wrote 90% of Remy Ma's rhymes, he is not just throwing shade at an ex-wife. He is making a claim that, if anyone took it to a courtroom or a label negotiating table, would have real financial consequences. That's the first systemic layer, and I don't think most people have processed how dangerous a statement like that actually is. It's one thing to say, she's not that good. It's a whole other thing to say the work was mine, because the second one is a claim of ownership, and ownership in this industry is everything. Now, do I believe Remy Ma, a woman who has been writing bars since she was a teenager in the Bronx and Castle Hill, needed Papoose to write 90% of anything? No, I do not, and here's the analytical reason why, beyond just vibes. Look at the actual output. Look at the technical difference between how she puts verses together and how the man making the claim puts verses together. Remy flips cadences, she manipulates the pocket, she layering internal rhyme schemes and melodic hooks in a way that sounds modern. And then you've got Papoose, who, by all accounts, raps like it's permanently 2005, dense but dated, respected in his lane but never the guy the culture points to as a template for the present. If he wrote 90% of her modern output, then why does her modern output sound leagues ahead of anything he's been putting out for the last decade? That's not me being messy. That's just a logic test, and the logic test fails on his side. The 90% claim doesn't hold up against the audible evidence, which is itself the funniest and most damning thing, because a real writer's voice shows up in the work, and the work does not match the claim. The second systemic layer is the far more cynical one, and this is where I want you to really think like an industry person for a second. There is a well-documented pattern in this business where a man, when a powerful woman outgrows him or leaves him, reaches for the one card that can still wound her, and that card is almost always credit. Not love, not loyalty, not truth, credit. Because love you can argue about, loyalty is subjective, but if you can convincingly claim the work was yours, you can poison the one thing she has left that no divorce can take, her reputation as an artist. In that framing, Papoose's 90% claim starts to look less like a statement of fact and more like a calculated reputational strike, the kind of move a person makes when they know they can't win on the merits, so they try to devalue the entire ledger. And the sudden appearance of a cease and desist, which we're going to get into in a moment, fits that same pattern perfectly. You'll notice the sequence. First you claim you wrote everything, then when she claps back and embarrasses you musically, you don't answer her with better music, you reach for a lawyer. That is the behavior of someone who has run out of creative ammunition, and it exposes the entire operation for what it is. The culture respects a bar. The culture respects a rebuttal. The culture does not respect a man who calls the legal team the second he starts losing a war he picked. And that gap, between how hip-hop settles things and how Papoose is trying to settle this, is the entire second layer of the machine, laid bare. The third systemic layer is bigger than either of them, and it's about how the audience itself gets played. Here's what the engagement economy does to a beef like this. It rewards whoever produces the most reactable content, not whoever is actually right. It incentivizes outrage, it pushes the drama to the top of every feed, and it flattens a nuanced story about authorship and legacy into a 10-second clip of a boxer looking stressed and a rapper looking triumphant. And once that flattening happens, truth becomes secondary to narrative. This is why you see so many accounts, so many reaction channels, so many accounts pretending to be neutral while quietly picking a side based on what gets the most clicks. And in the middle of all that noise, the actual substance, the claim about who wrote 90%, the beat choice, the blocked crime mob artist, the timing gets buried under a wave of hot takes. What Remy Ma is doing, whether she knows it or not, is forcing the machine to work in her favor because she's producing the primary source material herself. She's not responding to a narrative, she's authoring one in real time, on her own terms, and that is the single most powerful position you can be in when the algorithm is trying to tell your story for you. While everyone else is reacting, she's creating, and that's the difference between being a character in somebody's story and being the one holding the pen. Which, now that I say it out loud, is exactly what this entire beef was about from the jump. So, let's get to the part this whole video has been building toward, the truth bomb, the reveal that ties every one of these threads into a single knot, and I want you to brace for it because it reframes the entire last 2 years of these people's lives. Here it is. The woman everyone has been calling bitter, washed, and jealous is the only person in this entire story who is indisputably winning on the merits, in the arena where the fight was actually picked. The boxer is going to win her boxing match on Saturday. Most likely, the prediction markets have her as an overwhelming favorite against Kay Scott, and she should be. She's elite in that sport. But that's the trap. That's the sleight of hand nobody catches. She's allowed to win the thing she was already great at, while losing, badly, at the thing she keeps insisting she also is, a rapper, and that second loss is the one that actually stings, because it's the one that's public, ongoing, and unanswerable. Meanwhile, the man at the center of it all has painted himself into the single most unflattering corner a hip-hop figure can occupy. The guy who allegedly claims credit for his ex-wife's pen, then allegedly sends legal paperwork the moment he's losing the rap war, then lets his new partner take the public heat on Fight Week while he lurks in the background. If your whole brand was loyalty, and Papoose's brand was exactly that, the loyal husband, the ride or die, the man who held it down, then the absolute worst thing you can do in the culture is become the guy who sues his way out of a battle he started and lets the women around him catch all the bullets. And that right there is the collapse. That is the moment the myth dies on camera. You can survive a breakup. You can survive a messy divorce. You cannot survive the culture deciding that the one thing your name used to mean was a lie. And what makes this reveal land is that it's all public. It's all on the record, allegedly and reported, but traceable. The claim about 90%, reported by outlets like Vibe. The reported cease and desist, per Hollywood Unlocked, with a legal letter shown to be dated back in April, meaning this man allegedly went to lawyers a week into the very song war he helped ignite. The crime mob block, reported all over the blogs. The song, live on every platform right now, writing the very beat the blocked artist offered to walk the champion out to. String those 4 things together, and you don't need me to editorialize a single word, although I'm going to, because the picture is so clear it hurts. What you have is a narrative where one person is authoring her own resurrection in real time, one record at a time, and the other side is filing paperwork and hoping it all goes away. That's not a beef anymore. That's a casualty. And the casualty isn't Remy Ma. The casualty is the version of Papoose that the culture spent 15 years believing in, and the version of Claressa Shields that thought she could waltz into hip-hop off a boxing name and be handed respect that takes real rappers a decade to build. Neither of those versions survives contact with this song. And if the reported cease and desist was meant to stop the bleeding, I need you to understand why it did the exact opposite, because nothing in hip-hop confirms that you're losing louder than trying to have the words removed. A lawyer's letter is a white flag with a letterhead on it. The culture has always known this, and now the champion and her man get to learn it the hard way, in real time, with the whole internet as their audience. But here's why I'm not worried about the long game, and why you shouldn't be either, because the resolution of this entire story is already written in the one thing that never lies. The right person is winning, and she's winning without even having to raise her voice. Remy Ma came out of this chapter looking lighter, looking sharper, looking hungrier than she has in years, and that's not a coincidence. That's what happens when you finally drop dead weight and stop carrying a narrative that was never actually yours. She's been moving like an artist with something to prove again, linking with the right people, dropping records that actually respect the craft. And the culture is responding because it can always tell the difference between someone fighting for respect and someone performing for attention. While the other side is on podcasts trying to explain themselves, she's letting the music do the talking, and that is, and I mean this, the single most disciplined move a person in her position can make. The contrast could not be sharper, and I want to crystallize it for you in one sentence, the sentence that sums up this whole weird saga. One person makes diss records so good they don't need a diss, and the other side makes legal threats so weak they don't deserve a rebuttal. That's it. That's the whole story. The champion boxes, and she's great at it, and she should probably just go do that and stop trying to be a rapper, because every time she steps into the hip-hop arena, she's stepping into the one fight she cannot win, against a woman who has been training for it her entire life. And I told you from the jump that this was never really about the man, and now you can see it plainly. It was always about the pen, about who owns the words, about whether the culture would let a loud newcomer with a belt rewrite the history of a woman who actually earned her stripes in the era when stripes meant something. And the culture, as it always does, has picked its side, and it did not pick the person with the boxing record. Now, I want to be straight with you, because we're at the part where I tell you what happens next, and I genuinely believe this is only the start, not the ending. Here's what to watch for, because the story has 2 more turns in it, minimum. Number 1 is the fight itself, Saturday night, August 15th in Atlanta, because win or lose, the optics are already cooked. If Claressa Shields wins, and she probably will, the celebration is going to be drowned out by the fact that the entire fight week conversation was hijacked by a New York rapper, and that's a victory with an asterisk the size of a billboard on it. She's been claiming for weeks that she's focused, that nothing rattles her. But dropping a diss record the day before your title defense and watching it light up the internet is a specific kind of psychological pressure that doesn't just disappear when they play the national anthem. And if she somehow gets dragged, gets touched, gets made to look human against a major underdog, then the floodgates open and every prediction Remy made in that song becomes prophecy. Either way, the song wins. The second turn is the legal one, because if the reported cease and desist actually escalates, if there's any kind of filing, any kind of public push to have wanna go, or WIFL pulled down, then we enter a whole new phase where the legal case itself becomes content, and the culture will feast on it in a way Papoose has clearly not calculated. Every court mention is another round of people hearing the actual bars in question, and there is no version of a defamation or disparagement argument that survives the simplicity of Remy's counter. It's my opinion. It's my life. And you were never named until you named yourself. The more they litigate, the louder she gets, and they are walking straight into it. So here's what I need from you, because this is where you come in. Go run the numbers up on Wanna Go listen to it back to back with whatever the champion is putting out, and tell me Papoose didn't downgrade. Tell me this isn't a woman in her renaissance, cooking 2 people at once with a smile. And while you're at it, if you're not subscribed yet, do it now, because I am going to be on every single turn of the story, and whatever happens on Saturday night in Atlanta and in whatever courtroom they drag this into next. You are not going to want to hear it from somebody else. You're going to want it broken down right here, bar for bar, receipt for receipt, the way it deserves to be broken down. And if you're sitting there wondering what to watch next while you wait for Saturday, let me put something on your screen that you're going to need, because it's the prequel to everything you just heard. The video I'm sending you to is the one where this whole war really opened up, the record that got the legal team activated in the first place, the one where Remy Ma first made it clear she was standing on her own pen. And I break down exactly how that freestyle quietly undid the entire, he wrote 90%, narrative before most people even realized what they were watching. That one is the setup. This one was the explosion. And the next one, the one I'm dropping after the dust settles in Atlanta, is going to be the autopsy. So go ahead and click that, because I promise you, the story you think you understand is about to get 1 layer deeper, and once you see the setup, you'll never read this beef the same way again. Drop your thoughts below, hit that like, and I'll see you in the next one.